Welcome to Karen's Conversations number 33. In this conversation, I have the great pleasure to be speaking with Sonia Irwin. Sonia is I hope I get this right, the founder and strategist at Redgrass Communications, and also, in her spare time, is the organiser of Convergence Australia, which we're going to have a chat about. So welcome, Sonia.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Sonia, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an organisational change manager. At the moment, I'm working on quite a big project in some ways, and it's probably quite small depending on your experience. I've been working in change in government for about 15 years. It's been across both communications and organisational design, so it's always been an interesting way to go, and it keeps me very, very busy.
I bet it does. And tell us a bit about Redgrass.
Well, we're a boutique agency. There are three of us, but we have also a range of subcontractors. We're really about uplifting change capability, whether it's within an organisation or across sectors. So, yes, we've been working away quietly in the background for a number of years, just trying to get out there and get people connecting and encouraging people to talk about change.
Absolutely. And the big way, I guess, in which you do this is organise a change conference, which sounds like, something you just do while you're not doing anything else, but it's a big effort. And of course, Convergence Australia, it's in its third year. So alongside your busy life, what in hell sparked you to say, I need to organise a change conference?
So what I found about change is that it's one of those things that we have a lot of great practitioners out there, but not necessarily the environmental conditions to help them get the change through. And I mean, we can be talking about both project change, program change, or even large-scale organisational and transformation change. I was on a large project within government. I got very, very frustrated because it's a lot of energy and effort trying to get people to move to a new mode of operation or a new model or even just changing their mindset. And I was so angry. It's always a good way to start somewhere. I was really, really angry at what I perceived was a lot of public resources being spent and maybe not getting all the benefits we need to. I've also been studying environmental science and climate change in my earlier path, and I know that one of the big things we have is resources, and how we use them and making them more efficient and effective is really important to me.
Awesome. So how did that frustration link to the initiation of the conference?
I think it was a moment where I was sitting in a lecture on the Paris Treaty about climate change and hearing yet again that we weren't going to get it across the line. I would be talking to a professor of glaciology who was exceedingly depressed, and I just thought I couldn't keep going like this. And the only way I could see to actually make a difference was actually to help organisations get together, share their ideas, share their findings, connect with each other and learn. Because the more we learn about how people respond to change, the better off we are. So that's really started the idea of the conference. It was also about building my own professional practice. So I'm really lucky that I get to meet a lot of awesome people and learn from them myself. So, that for me is a major driver. But I think it's really down to the fact that we've just got to keep trying to make this work better. We can't just stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And Convergence is in its third year. So what are some of the differences you've seen over those 3 years?
Well, we started really obviously small because nobody had heard of us. It was a Canberra-based conference and it was more targeted towards government. In the 3 years, we've expanded out to include all sectors across Australia and also into New Zealand. So the last conference in Melbourne actually was one where I could say we had every state and territory represented. We had not-for-profit and for-profit and government there. We had New Zealanders there, which was awesome. So it really started to feel like a convergence of different ideas and experiences. And we moved to Melbourne. So we kind of felt that Melbourne was a very happening place in terms of change. There's a lot of innovation coming out of Melbourne. And not to say that Canberra isn't innovative, but we're just different in a different way. So it was a really nice way to come and meet the community down there. But yeah, audiences are expanding, people are more interested, these things take time to grow, but it's just nice having a community and seeing familiar faces every year. So that's a big plus.
Absolutely. I was lucky to be able to speak at Convergence back in April, and I just thought it was absolutely awesome gathering of like-minded people, but having a diversity of views and opinions as well. It felt like a real community. Well, it was a community, but it was nice feeling as well.
Yeah. And look, I mean, what we try to do is we try to encourage other professional disciplines to come along, because change makers have a really hard time. And the more we can get into creating allies and building understanding, the easier it is to push a change through. So, yeah, I mean, I've had project managers come along, program managers, business analysts, even finance people. And I think that's a real testament to the community in terms that they accept everybody, but also for the fact that we all want to share our knowledge. So it's a really great place to be.
Absolutely. And I think as well, I've had conversations in the past with other people about, our job is fairly tough at times. It can be very stressful. It can be very frustrating because, we're dealing with people, and there you go. It's going to be a pesky job. And it's great to have that community where we can, leverage each other and be supportive of each other. And because sometimes it can be a lonely existence as well. You can be a lone person trying to transition through a large change in a medium to large organisation, and it can feel very lonely at times. It's nice to have that community that you can lean on each other and share and say, are you okay?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, one of the topics we have talked about a lot is around resilience, and it's not just organisational, but it's individual, and it's really important that we all back each other. I think the world is a highly complex and complicated place, so the more we can actually support each other across the profession, I think the better off we are.
Absolutely. The more networking and socialising we can do and gather together is all good. And so over those 3 years, Sonia, with all the people that have been presenting, have you seen any particular sort of trends emerging in what people were talking about 3 years ago as opposed to what they're starting to talk about now?
I think what's interesting is that when I've thought that we've done this theme to death, so in year one we did a range of different themes, they naturally re-emerge again. So I think it's more around the fact that the themes of the consistent is where people are in their own pathways, if that makes sense. The ones that I have seen coming up really have been a lot more around mental health and resilience, and understanding that there's a physical and psychological impact on people. So there's been a lot more around unconscious bias and neuroscience. So I think that's definitely one that we're starting to get grapple with quite well. The other one is around method. Method seems to be, we think it's stable and we can just follow our way and that will be okay. But I think the methods are changing because the market conditions are changing so quickly. And it's all, what I'm seeing is that sort of human-centred design, iterative design, the impact of, I'll say small a, agile, rather than big A, the method, and mindset. Those are the things that seem to be coming up over and over again. It's been interesting, but, there's also things around future. I think we're all interested to think about where work's going to head. And this is a conversation I've had pretty much consistently every year. What's the future of work? How do we cope with society if we change how we work and we bring in large amounts of automation and AI? So, there's a continual themes that keep coming up, and I think we're just maybe as a species questioning it. Maybe it's more than just change managers, but I think in some ways we're ahead of the curve because we're having to plan what this looks like and how people can transition.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's good for that conversation is that we get to, what am I trying to say, a handful of change practitioners in an organisation who are expected to make things happen. And I think the way the world's changing, and I was hearing sort of this in the Melbourne Convergence, that where we have to make, everybody lead change, because we can't rely on a handful of so-called specialists anymore to do everything. They've got to be more strategists and do, tactics and plans, and get the organisation itself to, as you said, Sonia, have that resilience, personal resilience, but organisational resilience as well.
And look, I think we talk about change capability. We shouldn't be scared as practitioners to empower people to be confident in making change. The more we do that, the easier it is for the next change manager or organisational change designer coming through. This is the way the world works. It's just the speed is just incredible in terms of how businesses have to survive. So the more we can do to arm people to be able to cope with this, the better off we are. And it makes our job easier, really. And I think we can be at the pointy end, the strategy, the planning ahead, rather than worrying about implementation. So I think there's a lot of strength in that. It is scary to let go of being in control. I know that. There's 4, the current project, we've got 4 change managers involved, and we are really trying to uplift the capability, and it's hard work.
Yeah.
And I keep being asked, why aren't you on the ground and talking to everybody? I've got 500 people to talk to. There are not enough days in the year to spend with each one of them.
Yeah.
So you've got to be smarter about it.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of people, again, in talking about that. I mean, it was one of the things I talked about, is that the tools we've been traditionally using to do change management, we have to take a serious look at. And I know there's a lot of people saying the same thing. And I see a lot of change practitioners, which is why I'd love some of the people I'm hearing to go to Convergence to have these conversations, because they're struggling. They're struggling in their organisations. They said, we've been equipped with these tool sets which no longer work when we're in an iterative, rapidly changing, agile with a little a environment. And yes, we're in a period, so we're being disrupted as well, I think, because we've got to start thinking outside the box, and how do we adapt what we've got, and how do we look for additional tools and methods to respond to this world of continual change.
And look, I think the risk 3 one, which I see a lot in the project management industry, is there's such a heavy reliance on waterfall methodology, and that makes the change effort can be quite heavy at the end. And I'm sure there's a lot of change makers out there who've had a lot of sleepless nights just before a large ICT structure or project or programs about to be launched, or with the small A agile stuff. What I'm saying is that we're actually managing the change debt really well. We're actually being able to help the users get on board a lot quicker and hear about their impacts, so we can actually start that story and that journey a lot sooner than 6 to 8 weeks out on a waterfall project. And I think there's a value in that, because they can help design the solution to what the change impact will be. They're not left behind.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot more, if we are on a sort of iterative sprint agile type approach to delivery, that there's a lot more upfront work that the change practitioners actually have to do, because we actually don't know what's going to happen when. We have a destination we know we're going to, but we don't know how we're going to zigzag to get there, and things are going to. So I think we need to, what I'm calling building blocks, to say, well, if they do that, or if that happens, or if this happens, that we've got the blocks ready to go to work with the people to try, because it might be that stakeholder group yesterday, but now we've actually changed and it's not them anymore, it's somebody else. Well, we need all the preparation up front. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm I'm really tired at the moment. I've just been designing a big sprint plan for the area I'm in at the moment. I have I have 8 different what I call epics, and I must have it at least, I don't know, must be getting up to at least 100 user stories, just so that I can pull down as people respond. Because what we find is that where people are and what they're needing is different. So we can plan to be here, we can have a vision of being here, but knowing which card or which user story to pull is something that I think we can do a lot more in practice for change managers.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying to people as well. You know, if you are on that agile delivery, look at those user stories. They're your stakeholder stories. You know what they want, you know what they're looking to do, you know who's being impacted. It's just a good starting point. And people are going, oh, yeah, you know, I don't have to go out and do all the work. The project's actually done a lot of it for you up front. So
the biggest, the scariest part for us right now is we're about to launch our Jira board to both internal and external stakeholders, so they can see what stories we've got. And, you know, that changes the dynamics significantly, because all of a sudden it might settle them down, but it also might then help us pick up the gaps that we've missed. But being brave enough to be transparent, I think that's, you know, we're sitting there going through our user stories. Have we got them all? Have we got them all? You know, knowing full well that we've missed something. And, you know, you're using the wisdom of the crowd then. You're looking at, you know, the other smart people in the room who are going to help this change get across the line.
Yeah.
So it's exciting and scary.
It is. And what excites me is that the more things that we can make visible and transparent, and I was having this conversation today with one of the people who was at Melbourne Convergence.
Oh, come on.
And we were talking about, you know, if you make things transparent and visible, people will correct you and do your job for you. And it's such a powerful tool. If you're not sure where a certain stakeholder group is on their journey, then just make some sort of assumption, maybe make it err on the side of caution, make them reds and ambers as opposed to green. And somebody will say to you, hey, Karen, I've just had a call with that team and they're all over this, they're green. And you go, great, thanks very much. You know, so yeah, having that, the Trello, and people can see what's progressing, can also correct the course if we've got something not quite right.
And it's risky because we're disclosing, you know, we're putting it out there that this is how much we know. And I think a lot of us, well, my experience has been a lot of people like to protect themselves. But at the same time, you know, the effort that we can get and the energy moving in the right direction and actually having them trust you, like, that's gold. You know, if they trust you from day one, you're not going to lose them. Just don't break the expectations.
Absolutely. There's a lot to be said for the trust. So going back to Convergence and Melbourne in April, so tell us a bit, like how many people, what sort of speakers you had, some of the highlights?
I think the highlight from personal, so there's a couple of highlights from a professional perspective. The highlights were bringing across Angela Sinicus from the US. I'd been a big fan of hers for a long time in my comms life. So it was just nice hearing her stories again, because it was just one of those reminders that, you know, we are really smart people and don't be afraid to just do something a little bit different. We had about, I think it was about 96 to 100 people in the room. It felt busy, which was nice. It felt, you know, we were actually out there and connecting with people. We had 3 to 4 workshop streams running on each day. So that we ended up with, I think, about 18 to 24 workshops, which is quite a bit of effort, especially on the part of the presenters. So, yes, Karen, you were one of the most popular sessions and I got so much awesome feedback. And I think that's one of the things that I value, is hearing from people of, oh, thank God, someone else has already thought this. I can go and learn something rather than having to start from scratch, or just having that confirmation that I'm on the right track. Personally, the things that made me really happy is the warmness of the community. I don't know how many hugs I got. It was like, Sonia, and I'm like, Hello. And that to me says a lot about the community feel behind it. I did laugh. My husband kept saying, you should charge for those photos of you. And I'm like, no. Because everyone was like, quick, take a photo. But it was just, and also seeing some repeat friends from the last 3 years, they see the value in it and they keep coming back. And to me, that makes me feel like I'm on the right track. So, absolutely. Yeah.
So the conference was, or Convergence was entitled, Whose Change Is It Anyway? So what was the answer?
I think the majority was that it was everyone's change. I do like the fact that it's a different change for everybody. I think those two in itself, there was a great clip that we did with all the speakers at the end, and it wasn't all the speakers, it was only the 10 that we could grab running while they were busy running around. And everyone had a different lens to what the change is. But I think the jury was pretty much, there are change leaders, there are change makers, then there's change people who are impacted by the change. We all own the change. I think it's that simple, and that makes it really complex.
Absolutely, like who's doing what, but I think I totally agree with the sentiment, and it's like we touched on before. I think change has to be everybody's business when it's so fast and volatile and relentless as it is today. If it's just a handful of people who've got to try and do everything, it's just not going to happen. So yeah, we absolutely need more people actually understanding what people transitions and organisational change is, and being able to take more of a lead in that space. Otherwise, we're just not going to be able to do it.
Look, if the environmental conditions continue and a business now only has up to 3 years to basically go from startup to decline, which gives you 18 months, we have to be as adaptable as possible. Yeah. And even in government, it's the same scenario. This time frame has become shorter and shorter, so we have to become more and more adaptable.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's an easier conversation sometimes, I think, in a commercial organisation when you start talking about having to be leading edge or bleeding edge with technology, and technology changes so quickly, and there's competition, and you have to read the signals, be ahead of the game. And then you talk to some people in government, and it's like, oh, well, that doesn't affect us. And I'm like, well, it does, because your consumers, the electorates and everybody else are going to be demanding more. Government will demand more and more of you. And if you don't do it and respond to it at the speed that's been expected, someone else will come and do it for you.
Yeah, I think it's a hopeful naivety. That's how I like to view it. It's a hopeful naivety that we don't have to worry. But the reality is, just even from the viewpoint of laws and regulation, a technology can come in and totally disrupt an industry. One of the projects I was working on, if it kept going, would put a couple of not-for-profits out of business, and without thinking about it, because they didn't understand the impact of the technology and what that could do, and they weren't looking at the market conditions. So the one piece of advice I'd have is make sure you do your ecosystem or environmental impact, because it's going to be something that you don't expect that's going to come and bite you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're looking forward to the 20th of August in Canberra.
Yay!
Convergence goes to Canberra. So tell us a bit what people can expect.
It's going to be some people that I'm really excited to actually get a chance to sit in their workshop this time, rather than run around and go to that room, go to that room. So I feel personally that it's a really great opportunity to hear from yourself, hear about some really innovative ideas around things like storytelling, around biases. We've got Dr. Rich Allen coming in to open up with, and he's a live wire, so don't expect to stay still. And then we're closing with Dr. Jen Fram, and just her thoughts on leadership are I think it's a really good message for us to just keep in the back of our heads that this is what we've got to deal with. We've got, I think it's, I'm just trying to remember, I think we've got about 14 masterclasses, a couple of repeats, but mostly new content from Melbourne and also some content in from Canberra. And I'm actually really excited because my team's decided to pick up for one of the speakers who has had to duck off early, so she's only doing one session. So we're even going to get to hear about what we're up to in terms of agile change in a government context. So it should be fun.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it, and seeing some of the people I saw in Melbourne as well, because they were, yeah, great sessions. So where can people find out more information about Convergence in Canberra?
Aha! Good question. www.convergenceaustralia.com.au. I don't even know my own website. Or look on LinkedIn. Look me up on LinkedIn. I've done quite a few posts around there. Where also, if you get desperate, Google AdWords is up and running, so you can just type in Convergence and you should be able to find us, or Convergence Australia, or even Change Management. We'll be there.
And I'll put a link as well, so anyone who's watching this will have access to that link. Oh. Just before we go, I just wanted to ask you, over the 3 years of Convergence Australia, would there be one standout highlight that you have?
Good question. I think my go-to session still for me, personally speaking, was on resilience. On year one, which, you know, I keep going back and going, oh, I really should get, actually, no, there's 3. I've got 3, so can I have 3? Yes. There was resilience with Chris Pop, so a really excellent session for an hour around how we build organisational resilience and how it looks. We had Colin Ellis, who's an author for CIO magazine, and he just blew the socks off everybody in year 2. Woke us all up from our, you know, navel gazing and thinking how awesome we were, to bring it back to reality. So if you ever get a chance to read his blogs, it's really interesting. Year 3, oh, it's a toughie. Personally, for me, it was Angela, but I think for everybody else, it probably was Dr. Jalen. And maybe Jen. It's a toss. 2 days. Come on. Both of them as keynotes, they were just exceptionally good.
Yes.
And I've had questions back from the Change Management Institute about a couple of them. So, yeah.
Excellent.
How hard was that? I got 5.
Too many to choose from. I know it was a tough question to pick one. But no, that's cool. Like 1 per year and a few more. That's great. So I'm really looking forward to 20th of August, seeing you in Canberra. Looking forward to seeing more familiar faces, or the familiar faces, and meeting new people, and having the privilege to do one of the masterclasses as well. So between now and the 20th of August, hope you have a chance to have a little bit of downtime and a bit of a rest before.
No rest for the wicked.
I don't know how you do it. I really don't know how you do it. Yeah. Whatever you're on, Sonia, I want some of that, because I don't know how you do it. But
I was going to say Ventolin, but, you know, I think it's just, you know, you just roll with it. It's just the people every time getting across the line.
People keep you going. Awesome.
Yeah.
Sonia, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks for your time, and see you soon.
Yay! I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.